Hi, welcome to this edition of Your Healthy Home Show. Today I have Mike Oliveira, part owner of Pioneer Basement, and who I consider an expert in moisture control, basement waterproofing, protecting your home from the crawl space to the basement and everything in between. How are you today, Mike?
Pretty good. How are you, Joe?
Good. So here we are, February, and the season has been up and down. I mean, the grounds are wet. It's 50 degrees today. I know my dehumidifier in my own home has run practically all winter. But I know from talking to you and listening to customers, typically people react or think that their dehumidifier should be running in the summer months. What's your answer to that?
It could actually run at any time of the year. It all just depends on the way the home is built, pretty much, where it's located, if it gets a lot of moisture. So typically a house that does have groundwater problems, it tends to be a lot more moist than others. So that's why in certain cases you'll actually get high humidity content right in the middle of the winter,
Right.
Which is a whole different animal to address.
And most people unplug their dehumidifiers, thinking that they don't need it.
Yep.
And ultimately, it's the sense of smell. It's that musty odor. Things that maybe look moldy.
Yep.
I mean, those are all signs. My opinion is, I have this unit working in my house. It's called a hygrometer, and I look at that practically every time I go down into the basement just to see where my relative humidity is.
Good.
What is the best range in terms of what a basement should be?
It's mold and mildew will grow after about 50-55%. So you want to kind of keep it in the sweet spot between 45 to about 48. That's kind of where you want to keep it. Granted, it's very hard to keep it down to that exact percentage because every hygrometer is off by a certain percentage, usually a couple percent, either plus or minus. But typically anything under 50 and above 40 is kind of where you want to be.
So this is interesting because most of the box units, they will show 60, 55, and I don't know about you, but when I had one of the box units, and I'm talking about the smaller units, it would run constantly, and I would never see it below 58, 57,
Yep.
and it would run forever.
Yep.
So let's talk about what type of unit you would recommend for a basement.
Yep. So just rewinding just a little bit, those box units, you can get them at any local home improvement store. They typically come between 40 to 75 pints. And when you read the fine print, they're really only made to do an area the size of a bedroom, about a couple hundred square feet. So a lot of people buy them to do a whole basement, and it's the equivalent of opening up your freezer and trying to cool your whole house down.
Electricity.
It'll just run. It'll just constantly run. So the reason why those units can't bring it down to below that 55, 60 mark is because they simply just can't do that space that they're trying to dry. They can't push the air that they need to in order to get the circulation, in order to pull that moisture out of the air. And typically they're set up to where the homeowner has to actually empty them once a day or twice a day, which when you're doing that, even twice a day, you're only doing about 25% of what the unit can actually pull out of the air.
And that's if you remember to empty it out.
Exactly.
So once that chamber fills up, the dehumidifier just shuts off.
Typical cycle is homeowner will go and empty it, forget about it. Basement will start smelling a little musty. They'll go, hey, what's going on with the dehumidifier? And then they'll go and they'll find that it's full and it's shut off for X amount of days since they've been there last.
Interesting. So if you're not emptying it, you're susceptible to high humidity. If you have an undersized unit, the way I understand, it's going to run forever and not reach its set point or accomplish what you need to have accomplished. And then you said something before, draining it into a sump pit. People sometimes typically put it in the worst place. Where they naturally have water, because that's where all the water is collecting, because it's going through a sump system to get out of your house. But from a dehumidifier standpoint, what's actually happening when you're storing it next to a sump pit?
Well, typically it's an open pit, so it's just recirculating. So you're pulling water out of the air, you're pulling moisture out of the air, you're putting water back into the pump, and it's just sitting there and evaporating, especially if the pump's not running on and off.
This is a vicious cycle.
It's a doom loop. It's a doom loop.
All right, so talk about your solution.
Okay, so the right solution is to get a unit that's able to do the amount of square footage that you're trying to dry. Typically, a commercial size unit will do anywhere between 2,500 to 3,000 square feet. A lot of customers go, well, that's overkill. I don't need something that big.
Right.
Well, it's the exact opposite. You kind of want something that big so that it's able to dry the space out and turn off. A lot of the commercial dehumidifiers actually run off the same exact electricity as the small store-bought dehumidifiers. So you're using the same amount of electricity, but for a less amount of time. So instead of it running all day, it's only turning on 3-4 times a day, and you're saving that 6 amps or 7 amps, whatever it runs off, over a 24-hour period. So you're only using about maybe an hour worth versus 24 hours worth.
Right. And what you're saying, in my opinion, and what I've experienced, you are 100% right. I have one of these units in my own house, and the minute that you installed it, I noticed that it ran far less. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, it hardly runs. And I look at my hygrometer, it's always 42, 44, 45. The biggest difference that I've seen, Mike, is that my basement actually feels dry. It feels comfortable. So much that I'm feeling the difference upstairs, especially on those hot, humid summer days. So I can attest. And the last thing I'll say is you can feel this unit is moving air. It's moving air. The CFM must be, what is the typical?
It's much larger than the store-bought one. So a store-bought one, you have anywhere between 75 to about 125 CFMs. These units push close to 300 CFMs. So to exchange the air in an average sized basement, you're looking at about 15 to 20 minutes for one air exchange, versus a store-bought one that it won't even exchange all the air because it's really only working on a small circumference around it. And the little units would actually work better if you were to put a bunch of fans everywhere in the basement and blow everything around. Well, now you're using 6 amps on the unit and then whatever your fans are using. So it completely defeats the purpose.
So you're spending money. You're not accomplishing what you need to accomplish. And I fear as though if anyone's like me, if I don't go down to the basement to empty that chamber, and do it on a regular basis, then it defeats the whole purpose. And then lastly, in terms of cleaning the air, what else is there added value to having this type of unit?
Yes. So there is a filtration unit, filtration system on it as well. So it'll filter down most of your dust mites and dust mite droppings, just most of your allergens. Sorry. And you can change the filter every 6 months. There is a washable filter on it just for the big particulates, just for the big, dust and stuff like that. So you're not only dehumidifying, you're actually filtering the air as well. So you're not just blowing around dirty air. You're cleaning it, drying it, and then pushing it back into the basement. And then you get the added benefit of it just automatically draining, either to a little condenser pump, or if you have a pump system or a drain system you drain it into, so you don't have to sit and empty it. There's a digital readout on a good portion of the commercial units now. So you don't have to guess on where the humidity set point is. You can set it and make sure it's actually doing what it's supposed to.
Excellent. So in closing, when should a homeowner consider upgrading or consider actually buying a dehumidifier if they don't have one?
Well, every month of the year. There's no special time. Where most everybody starts thinking about it is right as the spring starts hitting and you start getting muggy outside. It's already too late at that point. And once you start feeling it in the house, it's already too late. So you really want to buy it before the humidity season. So right now, January, February, they're good Christmas gifts as well.
This is great. And when I spoke to you earlier this month, we're talking February, and we're, again, having an unusual season, but we're actually ahead of the curve. And if you can start thinking about a dehumidifier now and scheduling an installation, so ideally, the first steps would be, what's your relative humidity now in your home? And I wish I had one of those little hygrometers, but it's a small device. They're very inexpensive. You can buy them at your box store, and just you can literally put it on the floor or somewhere in your basement, and go down from time to time and take a look. So you're saying anything over 50%?
Anything over 50%, 50 to 55%, because again, each hygrometer is off by a couple percentage. So they give you a range, 50 to 55% or higher. that's where mold and mildew can start growing. Well, you need, right temperature,
and
food source.
It's not you saying this. I mean, it's listed in the EPA says this,
Yep.
the World Health Organization.
Yep.
I mean, these are well-funded, credited organizations that will say anything above those percentages in terms of relative humidity,
Yep.
you're creating an environment that could potentially have mold
Yeah,
or mildew.
any company that produces these type of units, you can even find it on their website, and it's not. This is all third-party information. This isn't, this isn't the manufacturer doctoring anything. It's all
Excellent.
studies that have been done from other sources, and it's just it's well known in the industry.
So I'm seeing a product that you recommend. It's called Wise Air, and there's different sizes, the different applications. I think you have 3 models, but the way you've been describing the functionality and how they work, performance, the ease of use without having to empty any of the water chambers,
Yep.
and then being automatic and actually doing the job.
Yeah, they're much quieter too than the small store-bought ones. About half of the air you breathe upstairs is from the basement. It's called stack effect. So just think of a house. As air escapes the roof, you need makeup air. So just think of your house sucking on the foundation. So if you open up windows in the basement in a humid day, you're just sucking in humid air. So if you dry that space, just the natural air movement from the basement up, that dry air is eventually going to make its way upstairs, and then the rest of the house benefits from it as well. So any moisture issue, anything in a home, it always starts from the base. So take care of the base first, and then the rest of the house benefits.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Very much.
I'll have to have you back.